Friends, welcome back, and thank you for joining us live. We are gifted with Apostate Alex, and what we're doing is a dual thing that we're going to be doing once a week on Thursdays at 2 p.m., and we'll tell you the significance of that in a second. But before we get started, Alex, do you want to kind of let people know what's going on, introduce yourself, and I'll pass it over to you. Then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so hi everyone, and hello everyone from my channel as well. We should be streaming, if we've done this right, on both of our channels at the same time. It's a new feature on StreamYard, which is pretty cool. So both Doug and I can see your comments regardless of which channel you're on. So hopefully you've got the setup right, and if it doesn't work, then we will try and do this every week, which is pretty cool. Just on my channel's monetized and Doug's is not. So if we get through to Q&As and there are any super chats or anything, I will split the money with Doug to make it fair, because he isn't monetized. So just to let you all know, that's where that's going. In terms of the importance of Thursdays at 2 and why we're doing this, in Scientology, the week, for some reason, I don't actually know why, starts and ends at 2 o'clock on Thursday. So when you're a staff member or SEAL member, you're doing your statistics, you count them from Thursday at 2. So it's a really significant time in the Scientology weekly calendar. So we thought it'd be quite fun to do a weekly little segment at that time, and just talk about different topics each week. Obviously it's 2 p.m. Pacific time. It's not 2 p.m. here in the UK, but yeah, it's quite a fun little idea. So we're going to talk about different topics every week, and today we're going to be talking about recovery, our recovery processes, and Doug's going to be hosting this one and doing more of an interview with me, and we'll probably mix it up, and it'll probably be more like a discussion anyway. But welcome to everyone on both our channels to the first Thursdays at 2.
Yeah, and as Alex said, this is going to be me interviewing him, but in the future, we're going to pick a specific subject and break it down. And also in due time, I'm sure we'll be having on a third person, a special guest, to break down specific topics. But since this is the first one, Alex, could you please introduce yourself to people that are living on Target 2 and don't know who you are, perhaps, and a brief background? Also, I want to let people know we did a full interview with Alex on my channel and vice versa. So he's not going to give the full rundown. You can find that on our channels, but please, my friend.
Yeah, so long story short, I am Apostate Alex. I was the director of public book sales at the Church of Scientology in London. So I was in a public-facing division, selling books, going out there in the public, getting new people into Scientology. My story is quite long and convoluted. I joined as a teenager. I actually got kicked out, and then rejoined, and then finally got kicked out again. And I was declared a potential trouble source, which basically means I was complaining about Scientology not helping me at the time. And so they didn't want anything to do with me, kicked me out. And then I kind of drifted away from Scientology and didn't really do much thinking on it or talking about it, just kind of went on with my life. I was still a teenager, so I started university and all that sort of thing. Kind of, did my own thing, and several years, something like 6 years later or so, I realized it was still affecting me, and so decided at that point that maybe I should start unpacking it. And I always say unpicking because I think it's more like picking things apart. It's not like when I say unpacking, for me, it seems like neat little packages you're taking out. Whereas with Scientology recovery, it's a lot more you're picking at little bits. It's not like it's more like a mess in your brain. But anyway, yeah, so started sort of doing that work. And over the space of 6 months or a year or something, decided to share my story on Chris Shelton's channel, and did some interviews with like yourself, Doug, and then started my own channel about 6 weeks ago. And now I'm sharing people's stories and experiences and just using this platform to raise awareness and let people kind of tell their story, really.
On a personal level, I really appreciate your help, and I'm so happy that Scientology didn't get you, and you didn't, I think we were talking once, Alex, and you said that, if your strength of conviction was still in there, you would have been able to use your talents to be David Miscavige's right-hand man. And, you could have risen to the top. And I absolutely believe that. So thank God we got you on the other side. And, you've moved really, really quickly as an ex. And maybe you could share kind of some of the behind the scenes as to what it took to actually start talking out about it, because it's a huge step. but you've been doing fantastic. And how is your mental health holding up? Me and Marcus were talking about how, when you speak out about this, especially when you have to make content for YouTube, it can be overloading, or it's a special subject to talk out about on these channels. So how are you doing with that whole thing, my man?
Yeah, good. I mean, for the first question, the Dave Miscavige thing, I think that was kind of more a symbol of my dedication when I was in Scientology. And what I try and do when I tell my story and share other people's stories is try and help people to understand the mindset and what goes on in your head when you're in Scientology and how they get you into a place of being fully committed. I had signed my SEAL contract, which is a 1 billion year contract to dedicate your life and all future lives to Scientology. So they have to do a lot of things in your head to get you to the place where you think that this is the way to help people and save the planet. So I try and kind of explain that. And I think the Dave Miscavige story was more like, if I was still in Scientology and didn't get kicked out, like that's how dedicated I was. That, yeah, without a doubt, I would have, I was on a program to go and move over to Flag and join the Sea Org. And, I definitely was committed enough to start making my way up, and would probably still be in today if I hadn't been kicked out. But answer your second question about speaking out on the channel, and I think for me it's been really eye-opening to hear other people's stories. There's not many people in the UK sharing their stories about Scientology. There's John Atack, but he's not been in Scientology for decades, and he's really, really experienced. He knows a lot of information. But other than him, there's no like prolific UK Scientology YouTuber or content creator or whatever. There's people that have shared their stories, but I thought this is just a nice way of letting people know that what goes on in Scientology, because you hear all these stories of abuses and the Sea Org and all of these horrible happen. But I kind of want to make people aware that it happens everywhere, not just in the States, not just in the Sea Org. Everyone has these stories, and it's been really, I wouldn't say overwhelming, but it's been really nice to hear people's stories and contacting me going, it's so nice to hear a UK voice talking about the experience here. I get emails and messages almost daily from people saying, just hearing a UK voice and perspective on Scientology has helped me understand my own journey. And that's been really heartwarming to like see how supportive and nice the community are, because in Scientology they paint this picture that the outside world and SPs are these horrible people that want to ruin your life, and actually it's the opposite. Everyone in this community has been really supportive and really nice to each other. So
It's literally the exact opposite of Scientology, isn't it? We were just talking about this before going live, how what a community is, what a community of people it is, and just how, we actually help each other. I mean, I've told people this before, behind the scenes, you've probably helped me out for 80, 90, 100 hours just doing all sorts of stuff behind the scenes. And I'm only one person that you've helped out, which, yeah, I really appreciate it, man, because like ever since Aaron kind of started by blowing up his channel, and all of a sudden a bunch of people came out of the woodwork, they started channels, and they have so much pressure on them. And rather than disengage people from the community, it's brought everybody together. And on a personal level, if I didn't have you and Marcus and some other people, I wouldn't, have been able to heal from my recent situation. My parents, my dad passed recently, and being able to reach out to somebody that understands all about it, because I only had, I'm not going to say the Scientology word for non-Scientologists because I hate that word. But I've never had a community of such caring people, man. And like you said, the church tells you that we're all evil, and you think you're going to meet a monster when you run into these SPs, but they've been the nicest people ever. So your mental health is holding up. Talking about this, what kind of, can I ask you, what kind of as we talk about this healing process, what kind of healing stage do you think you need to get to talk? You said you had people reaching out behind the scenes. Are these people, some of these people that want to come forward, but they, what are some of the issues that you see that you run into with this subject?
yeah, I mean, one thing to say is everybody's journey is different, and everyone's mindset is different, the head is different, and everyone thinks different ways. So there's not really like a universal recovery process, but there are definitely similarities. And the way Scientology gets into your brain so deep that you are so committed in your head, and it takes over literally, if you're in as a kid or as a teenager, your neural pathways, the way you process information and think about things, which is a really deep effect in your mind. So the recovery and sort of overturning of that is a really long process, and everyone is different. But for me, because the Scientology paints such a picture of what the world is like outside of Scientology, even though I'd been living outside of Scientology, there's still this kind of in your head, this thing of like, well, I don't really want to talk about it because people are really anti-Scientology and they wouldn't understand. And there's also a bit of fear of like, if you speak out against Scientology, they will come after you and make your life a living hell. So those two things coupled together means one really big hurdle obviously is getting out and changing your mindset. We talk about that, but I'm talking about once you've left, to then speak to someone else about your experience is a huge thing, and it's a huge hurdle to overcome. And for me, I was watching videos like yours and Chris Shelton's and Aaron Smith-Levin's for months and months and months before I didn't have any engagement. I didn't comment, because I just didn't want any, like, I wasn't ready for that in my head, but I was really being helped by hearing other people's stories and drawing similarities and comparisons. So I did that for months and months, and then decided to reach out to Chris Shelton, and wasn't ready to share my story publicly, but just talking to another former Scientologist was almost the best therapy I've had, because you're talking to someone who's been through it, who understands it. You can use all the Scientology jargon and lingo. And I spent an hour with Chris Shelton just on Zoom, and I said, hey, can I just talk to you? I don't know what about. I just feel like I need to talk to a former Scientologist. And we spent an hour talking, and it felt like a really big weight lifted off my shoulders, kind of like the feeling you get at the end of an auditing session. It was great. And then I kind of thought about it over the weekend, and I got back to him and said, cool, can I have another couple of hours with you where I just fire loads of questions at you? And he was really great. I literally just asked him really strange, specific Scientology questions, like policy questions. And, if this happens and this happens, what does that mean? And what's the policy on this that I didn't know about? And really weird questions, but helped me understand it a lot better in my mind. And that was really, really helpful. And then the next hurdle is, wanting to speak out. And again, that's another big step. It takes a lot of bravery, because you have to confront it in your mind and think about what's happened to you, and that whole healing process. To then speak about it publicly is a very demanding thing on your confidence. So I get a lot of people reaching out that just want to talk to me and share their stories and say that they've been helped by listening to other people's stories, and that's totally fine and absolutely great. And sometimes people say, I want to share my story, I'm not quite ready for it yet, but I just want to reach out. And everyone's on their different kind of part of that journey. But the thing for me that got me to do it was realizing not only was it beneficial to my recovery to tell my story and get it out there, because I hadn't done that before. Even with my friends, I hadn't ever sat down with someone and told my story from start to finish. So doing that was a big thing. But it was the fact that you're doing that. What got me to do it was realizing that I could help people, right? And realizing that what has helped me get to this point is hearing other people's stories. Well, if I share my story, who knows how many people I can help, and how many people can draw similarities with my story. So actually, once people realize that sharing your story publicly is only going to help people, I think most people are happy to do so. But it is a big step in your mind.
Thank you for sharing that, man. I think you're very brave to do that. And having done it myself, it's been a hell of an adventure the last 3 years, and it can definitely be challenging. Should probably remove that SPTV thing above you, man. It's kind of annoying, huh? What do you guys think is better, this one or this one? How about this?
I like the first one.
Okay. How about this is 1, guys, and this is 2 in the chat. I mean, they're both pretty bad, right? We're probably not going to actually use any of these. But we do have Marcus, who was on the channel a few days ago. He's going to make some incredible
He's
graphics.
in the chat, in Theta.
Oh, is he?
Mm-hmm.
Are you there, Marcus? Awesome. Good to see you. I'm trying to figure out how to actually get rid of that logo. Okay, well,
it's cool. We can keep it.
Okay.
I'm not fussed.
So, Alex, in regards, since we're going to be talking about recovery, one of the things that you showed me was kind of this Venn diagram where you were working out what was true in Scientology, what was false, and what is somewhere in between, like shades of gray. Did you want to bring that up, or do you want to talk about it, kind of how you began the healing process?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of story before we get to that point.
Sure.
Because obviously we can talk about our recovery processes, and everyone's different, but there are similarities. So I think by sharing what I went through in my head, maybe you will find some things that were similar or the same, and other people can do the same. So I don't want to generalize and say this is what people go through. I can only speak to my own experiences. And for me, what did it was I was going to therapy for something completely unrelated to Scientology about 6 years after I left. And it got to the point where the therapist was saying, you're struggling to feel emotions in the room. And in order to work on these emotions and feelings, you need to feel them in the room so we can work through them, etc. And we talked a bit about Scientology, and I realized that Scientology makes you not just suppress emotions, but so deeply that you don't even recognize you have those emotions there sometimes. So I found it really hard to feel the emotions in the room because I wasn't even registering that I was having an emotion. It's not like I had it and I just sort of pushed it down. I just didn't feel it at all. And that's when I realized it would be useful to, maybe there's more to it, and maybe I should seek some sort of specialist support. So I started seeing a specialist therapist who deals with like specifically cult recovery and Scientology, and they've got a really good understanding of how it works and all of that. And it was a really good process just to talk to them, and they knew the sort of questions to ask me and to get me thinking and questioning myself, and kind of went on that journey. And it has helped tremendously in trying to figure out in my brain. For me, a big thing that I struggled with was figuring out who I am and who Scientology me is, because I was in Scientology as a teenager. So I was growing up in this thing. So that period of being a teenager, when you're trying to figure out who you are and what your purpose is and what you believe in and what you want to do with your life, you know, typical teenage angst and, you know, finding yourself type stuff. I was in Scientology during that period. So Scientology was the answer to that. You know, Scientology was what I wanted to do with my life. It was the way of helping people, clearing the planet on a mission. So those questions were kind of answered by Scientology. So my kind of mental development was almost delayed. It was kind of paused because I didn't ask myself those questions of who I am, what is true to me, what do I believe in, because I didn't have to. So when I started seeing the therapist, they were just helping me go through that process, and realizing in my late 20s that, you know, I still had these questions that most people figure out as a teenager of who am I, what's important to me, what do I believe in, what do I want to do with my life, like who is Alex, right? So one of the things I was really struggling with was what is that, what's me, and what are things that I believe in or you know, think about or behave in a certain way as a result of Scientology. So one of the things they got me to do was plant on this kind of Venn diagram sorry, I've just seen a super chat.
Yes.
Rocket out with Kim D. High. Slow and steady wins the race. Thank you for your hard work.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Rocket Out. Or
thank
Kim,
you
shall
for the
I
super
say.
chat. Yeah, thank you for the super chat. It's very kind of you. But yeah, so they kind of suggested plotting out, and in my own time, what, like writing down, this is how I did it. I wrote down all of the like principles, techniques, technology, whether it's a big concept of like clearing the planet or getting ethics in, right down to specific policies or things in Scientology, you know, like study technology and how to learn and clearing words and that sort of thing. So I just thought in my head, what is Scientology? And I wrote down all of these things in a list. And then I did this Venn diagram. And I started plotting, what do I believe in? What do I agree with? And what do I completely disagree with? And then what's in the middle? And just the act of like putting it in this sort of format helped me look at it and realize that just because I think something that's a Scientology belief or practice, that doesn't mean it's all bad, right? The example, one example is in Scientology and Dianetics, Owen Hubbard writes that man is basically good, rather than man is evil with original sin, like in Christianity, and you've got to repent. Owen Hubbard is the opposite. He says man is basically trying to do the right thing.
Right.
And I can get on board with that. I agree with that. And I don't agree with it because it's Scientology. I agree with it because I like that concept and I can agree with it. So just putting it in this Venn diagram of looking at, okay, what what good bits are there and what bad bits are there, and what bits actually are not Scientology and actually what I believe, and that helped me frame things like man is basically good. That's how I talk about it and how I describe it, because that's the Scientology technique. But I don't believe that because of Scientology. I've always believed that, right? And just putting it on this Venn diagram really helped in my mind figure out who I am and who I'm not, I suppose. Kind of like going to OT8. The end phenomena is OT8 is you now know who you are not.
And
So it's
willing
kind
to
of similar to
find
that.
out who you are, just like the clear cognition is. I realized I was mocking up my reactive mind the whole time, and I simply can stop doing that. I swear he was trolling us. He was getting a kick out of that, like any narcissist or psychopath. I think he really got off on tricking people. In fact, Alex, you know what? I can even hear him. I have this one lecture on a episode that's called "The Bridge to Total Amnesia," which I in the process of re-uploading, and there's a lecture where he's laughing while he's hypnotizing the people and literally snapping his fingers while he's putting in certain suggestions, and you could just hear. He was really aloof and he was really childlike, and he had the government and all these conspiracies coming after him, and he seemed to be able to handle himself so well, and he never seemed to be worried. But what it really was, when I listened back to these lectures, is it was somebody who got off on hurting people, somebody who got off on tricking and getting one over on people. In fact, I don't know if you remember, but this Granada crew, the one interview that they got of Hubbard, Raw, is a black and white thing.
Yeah.
And there's an article where the producers of that Granada thing said that they asked Hubbard on the deck at 4 a.m. late at night when no film crews were around and off the record. He asked him if Hubbard, one, knew that he was conning people, and two, what did he get out of it? And he said, yes, I know. And I can't stop because I basically get off on it. And he says, what I like to do is catch the really clever ones. So you could tell it was like, his game or whatever. I don't know why I got off on that tangent, but you know what happened with me, Alex? Like, since, listen, folks, this is the damage that it does. And he was only in for a few years, remember? And he's still, trying to figure out what was his Scientology self, as Steve Hassan talks about in that book, which I talk about. There's a pseudo self, a cult identity that kind of gets created with the nomenclature that we download and being around and in the environment, emulating, mirroring the other cult members. And then there's the real self that was either there before, or like me, there wasn't a hell of a lot of real self between 0 and 9. So when I got into it around 9 or 10 and started getting indoctrinated when my dad got into it, and then I got out in my early 30s, it was like being on an acid trip. It was like I had no idea what my favorite color was, what my likes and dislikes were. I felt like I was a 6-year-old, as I describe it. So, that's what it does to. I make the point that even if you're in for a few weeks and you take that communication course, you're going into an altered state of consciousness and you're having their nomenclature downloaded already, and you're in and around the environment. So it doesn't take that long to start creating this pseudo identity. And depending on the length of time, some people do get out unscathed. Some people are born in like me, and they actually, probably don't go through trauma. But it's just amazing, Alex. Like, I mean, I'm still healing. I got out in January 2008. So how many years is that? 15 or whatever the hell that is. And I'm still finding pieces of, stuff that's Hubbard's. Now, how long have you been out? Oh, well, somebody had a question here real quick, Alex, about how you actually got into Scientology. Sure. Would you mind answering this question just so we can lay some groundwork?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting what you said about not like kind of feeling like a 6-year-old when you left because you didn't really have a before Scientology. Obviously, I had a before Scientology because I joined Scientology when I was 15 or so. However, that doesn't mean that process didn't happen, because even at 15, you're still figuring out who you are. And I relate to what you said so much. It's very similar. When I got out, it was like, well, that period of really figuring yourself out was missed because I was there during those important years. And also things in my personal life and growing up and stuff, there were elements that from my childhood that would have had an impact on that development stuff. So, and everyone has their own stories and it affects you in different ways. But how I got in was I watched a lot of stuff about and read a lot of stuff about Scientology and heard some really bad stories and abuses and things. And I kind of wanted to know for myself whether it was as bad as it seems. As you know, is it just that journalists have, if you think about a review for a restaurant on Google Maps or something, right, it's going to be either really good comments or really bad comments. You don't leave a review of a restaurant that you went to that was kind of okay. You only really get the extreme ends of the spectrum. And I was aware of this, and I heard all of these negative stories and wanted to go and find out for myself whether it was actually as bad as it seems, or whether it is just a small number of people that have a loud voice about how they've had a bad experience and they've annoyed a couple of journalists, and they're trying to make Scientology look as bad as they can. So went in with quite a critical and open mind, asked all of the big questions, and um, was, I didn't accept everything they said. I was like, do you believe in aliens? Do you do disconnection? All this sort of stuff. And they answer your questions in a way that satisfies your demand, right? If you were to, I was to ask about disconnection, do you disconnect families and things like this? They would answer it in a sort of way like, well, you know, if you had a friend or something that was bullying you or was being mean to you, you naturally would distance yourself from that person and try not to hang out with them because they're being mean to you. That's what the concept behind disconnection is. And that's all it is in Scientology. It's just a formal way of someone deciding to disconnect from someone that's not helping them in their life. And you think, oh, okay, great. Well, that sounds a lot more agreeable than what I'm reading in the press. And if that is genuinely what it is, then perhaps that's been applied in the wrong way, or it's a bit more extreme over in the States, or it's being done incorrectly, and some people have had about it. So anyway, asking all the questions, and that's how they get you. Because one of the big things, if you ever ask a Scientologist what they believe, what is Scientology, they would always say the best way is to buy a book or go to a church and find out for yourself. And you think, well, there's no harm in that, because you go, well, if you want to know what Scientology is, well, here's a course. It's like 30 quid, like 40 bucks or whatever. And it will help you understand whatever, communication or problems at work or whatever it is. And there's no like contracts or commitments. You do the course, you read the book, you answer questions, and it gives you tips and tools and techniques that you apply. If it doesn't work, if you don't agree with it, that's fine. Like, no problems. You're in control. You do the course, and why not? And that's the best way of finding out what Scientology is, because you're learning about it. That is exactly what it is. And so you think, okay, great. Well, they're not going to tell you the Xenu story or ask you to disconnect from your family on day one, because no one would ever join. So they get you in this process of going, well, look, I want to find out a bit more. And suddenly a few months later, you're like, well, I've done this however many courses and spent however many hours here learning this, and I haven't had a bad experience so far. I've only read stuff that's helped me, and I can see it works and people are happy, and you just carry on. And then before you know it, you're in a situation where you've signed your style contract and you've ended up, because it's a very shallow way of like the gradient isn't steep. It's a very like slight little things here and there that build up over time, and before you know it, you're fully committed.
That was really, really well said, Alex. I try to make that point too about how it happens slowly, sensible concepts. You're not being hit up to join staff. It's just clear your words and, hey, this is how you get your business scats going. And then how would you describe to people then where you go from that, where you cannot see any of this disconnection? They're not telling you about Xenia. You can't see any of this stuff going on with John Sweeney. I know exactly what you're talking about, man, because for weeks, months on end, I was just doing choruses, man, and learning some stuff. No one was forcing me to go there. They were telling me if it's only true if it's true for me. Now, mind you, I can't see all the mind control tactics, the psychological manipulation, and the very subtle snags that are happening with each one of these choruses along the way, because it's boiling a frog in hot water and it's step by step by step. So how would you explain that you went from that sensibility into how the hell did you wind up on staff? What was that? How did that kind of work out,
Well, I was only in Scientology for, it must have been about 6 months or something before I was on staff. It wasn't very long, but in that time period, I'd done a couple of courses and I hadn't seen any evidence of this bad stuff that I've read about in the press. And everyone in the org was really nice and friendly, and they all want to help each other. A lot of people don't understand that Scientologists genuinely want to help people. They are good people. They think Scientology is the way to help humankind. So they're not sitting there thinking, oh, how can I manipulate this person, or how can I control this person? They are thinking, well, Scientology is the answer to help this person, so I'm going to do everything I can to get this person into Scientology because that's going to help them. So they're good people, they're well intentioned, and you see that when you're in the org and you do these courses, and over 6 months you kind of think, well, everyone here seems to be having a great time, they're all really friendly, they're all really happy, and they feed you little bits of confidence and ego boosting things and love bombing and saying, well, you know, you would be great at doing this, and if you were to join staff, we could give you a post that involves doing this and in charge of this and responsibility, and why not give it a go? Because it's, when you first join staff, it's 2.5 years or 5 years. It's not the billion-year contract. It's Monday to Friday, 9 to 6, or evenings and weekends. There's 2 different contracts, and you think, well, why not try it? Because I've seen Scientology help me with doing these life improvement courses. I've seen everyone else around here being helped by it. So what harm is there if I join staff, do 2.5 years, even if at the end of that I think this is all a load of rubbish and I don't enjoy it? It's 2.5 years. I can go and do something else afterwards. And that's what I mean about well, why not just try it? Try it for yourself and find out. And if you don't like it, then you can plod along. But in the process of doing that, they give you more and more stuff that slowly integrates your mind into their way of thinking, and suddenly you're in this place where you believe that Scientology is the way to clear the planet, save the planet. It's this big global mission. It makes you feel like you're doing something important that's going to change the world in a really positive way. And it's like, this is how you can most effectively have an impact, like help people and really make a difference to this world that we live in, that's full of suffering and pain and anger and all of this. So that you just go along with it and you go, okay, great, and that's fine. And you ask all the questions and they go, well, this is, you're asking this question, why don't you just read the book? It will tell you, it'll answer the question. And slowly, suddenly you are telling yourself to read the book when you have a question, because you think the answer's in the book, and L. Ron Hubbard has the answer to everything, and you end up signing your life away.
Was there any particular point, Alex, where, well, let me ask you this. So you didn't know you were in a cult the whole time. And I imagine that you had some people come up and tell you or try to badmouth you, but you knew how to handle them. You knew what the tech was, and you knew you did enough courses and training to how to handle the public, especially since you were out there dealing with these people, selling them books. Mm-hmm. So I know that crushing certainty that develops slowly over time. But when you came out, it was mostly because you didn't know anything necessarily was wrong, Alex. You were just fighting the policy. Like, hey, why are you doing this? What do you mean? You wanted to get back in, right? You didn't feel like you had been mind controlled or manipulated or anything. So what point did it actually dawn on you? Did you run across some information? Were you sitting there on the couch one day and it just hit you? Or was it a slow process? How the hell did you even know you were in a quote unquote destructive cult, or let's call it a high control group?
Yeah, so I didn't have that realization until 6 years after I left, because I didn't want to leave. I got kicked out. I was fighting to stay, and then just drifted away over time. And I went through, over a couple of years after leaving, periods of going, they've really annoyed me, they've upset me, this is rubbish, and then going through to, oh, maybe there is a way back, and maybe, and so on. So I still considered myself a Scientologist for about 2 years after being kicked off staff. And then just kind of drifted away and stopped doing extension courses and things, which is when you do courses online rather than in the org. And didn't really think much about it. And I didn't consider myself a Scientologist. I wasn't applying policy or techniques or anything like that. But it hit me when I was having in the therapy session with the emotion thing I was talking about. But when it really hit home was I was talking to a friend, and it wasn't an argument, but it was kind of like an emotional conversation where he was a bit upset. And I realized in that conversation that, I don't know what happened or how I figured it out, but it just clicked in my brain. Instead of listening to what he was saying and trying to handle the situation and talk it out and make the situation better, my brain went to the place of, which is exactly what Scientology teach you, of, this person is upset, and therefore we're not going to resolve the situation. So I need to get this person to not be upset anymore and get him to be more normal or happy, because that's when you start thinking rationally, and then we can talk about the problem and fix it and sort it out. So I realized, just like in the conversation, that I was not consciously trying to manipulate this person, right? Trying to change his emotions so that I could then talk about the problem, rather than like talking to the guy and figuring out the problem like a normal person. And when I realized I was doing it without even noticing, I was like, wow, I haven't stepped foot in a Church of Scientology in 6 years. And here I am doing something that is a Scientology technique. I wasn't thinking about it, I wasn't aware of it, but I just realized, hold on, I'm not actually listening to what this guy says. I'm just trying to change the way he's acting, his behavior, his emotion. And that's when it hit for me. I was like, wow, this thing goes deeper than I thought.
That is incredible. You want to know what I'll tell you my moment in a minute, but I wanted to ask you something. Now, you said you were out for about 6 or 7 years when you had this quote unquote cognition, right? In therapy session. Can I ask you, did you have to get over any of the phobia indoctrination that they put into us about going to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist? How did that go about getting over that hump?
100%. Like the first time I went to therapy was not anything to do with Scientology, but there was still a point in my head where I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about psychiatry and therapy and all of this. It's not that because I was already not considering myself a Scientologist at that point. So it's not like I believed in it like Scientology say the psych's bad and I think auditing is the way to fix my problem. But there was still a bit of unease about going to see a therapist, because you've been told all these things about, so they're trying to change your emotions and all of this. Cheryl Autry, it's okay not to be okay. Glad you're here. Thank you, Grant.
Well said.
Well
said, Cheryl, and thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is okay to not be okay. We don't pretend to be gurus. Oh, I wanted to say one disclaimer. We're just discussing cult recovery, and this is completely our opinion. But please, seek professionals when dealing with this. These are not to be taken as gospel, because we're too, I don't like to say damaged person. I don't feel damaged anymore. And I don't know if Alex would say that either. I've actually become a better person through this whole experience, and even before I got into Scientology, which is kind of ironic. But we're certainly not professionals. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was saying earlier about, sharing experiences and people's stories is really helpful to people. And I'm only talking about my experiences because I'm not a professional. I can't talk about the recovery process from a psychology point of view or anything like that, but I can tell you what I went through. And from hearing other people do the same thing, I've realized the similarities and done a bit of work myself. So that was really helpful.
You know what moment was for me, Alex? I had been out. Well, was I even out? Yeah, I was out for maybe a few months, and I was just sitting on the couch one night, and I had a cognition. That means realization. That's Scientology's word for realization. It was the first time that I ever felt in my life or remember of having an original thought, a decision, some bright idea that popped into my head that didn't come from reading L. Ron Hubbard. It didn't come from a realization in an auditing session. I literally just had my first original thought ever. And by original thought, I mean my own thought that wasn't coming from my programming. I know that's going to sound really weird to people, but it was I had so many psychedelic, weird, individual situations like I'm describing now for about 10 years and continuing coming out of Scientology. So once I realized that I had my own original thought since I was a kid, or maybe for the first time in my life, I couldn't help but recognize that Scientology did a hell of a lot of damage, way, way more than I could ever even imagine. Like you said, Alex. So how do you feel? Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, that's what I mean about trying to get people to understand the mindset and the way the mind thinks. It's not like in a traditional, more wider accepted religion like Christianity or Islam or Judaism, there's a book of scripture and there's an element of faith. You believe in it or you don't. And there isn't really that element. There is later on, but in Scientology, it's not really perceived like that, because it's not a case of you have to have faith and you believe in it or you don't. It's not like, here's a book of scripture, read it, and here's a story of Jesus or whatever, and it's things that you do, and it's tools and techniques and things like this that you apply. And because of the way that it's structured, it literally affects you in like the way you think, the way you process information. Like the story of
Yes.
my friend that was upset, and you know, it wasn't that I was sat there thinking, oh well, in Scientology they taught me how to do this, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is why I need to get him to feel better before we can talk about it. That just isn't a thought process. It's instinctive that you just think, you know, I've got to change this person's emotion before we talk about it. So that's what I mean about the mindset, how deep it goes, because it affects you in many, many ways. It's not that you're sat there, do you believe in it or not?
I know.
I don't believe in Scientology, but there are still things that I'm finding every single day that I'm like, oh, hold on. Do I think that because of Scientology? Or hold on, did I, you know, is that a Scientology thing or is that a me thing? And because it goes so deep in your neural pathways.
It's a good process, though, isn't it? Because, you know, it maybe not only question Scientology, but my programming in general. And I was thinking, how many times during a person's lifetime do they actually get forced into a position where they have to self-reflect on such a concise level?
Thank you to Joe for
Yeah.
the super sticker, by the way. That's really kind of you.
Alex, now let's get into some of the maybe technicalities of this. Like, how would you say that these processes actually happen? Because we're not being told that we have to do anything. We're not being forced into it. We're not, you know, being necessarily locked in a room. We're there on our own free will. And L. Ron Hubbard says, like I said, if it's only true if it's true for you. If you don't want to believe it, no problem. But then they also juxtapose that with, if you don't understand L. Ron Hubbard, it's because you went past a word that you don't understand. It's not because L. Ron Hubbard's wrong. It's always because you went past a word. So were you able to break down some of these tricks and things? And also to help out with that, you know, is that like are you having somebody moving a house next door to you? It sounds really loud over there, my friend. Can you guys hear? Yeah.
I haven't changed anything in my settings.
Oh, Alex,
sorry.
I'm sorry, man. It's just all of a sudden the feedback got kind of loud. Can you guys hear that, or am I just hearing it on this end?
I've just turned my sensitivity
That
down.
sounds better. That definitely sounds better. I'm pretty sure that people could hear it. Apologies for that, but if it gets too bad, just let us know in the chat. I'm gonna throw Alex and Ethics on the Discord channel. So believe me, I'll be handling that later. I don't know if this helps, Alex, but you know, this is what I point to. Like, you know, you can get into a debate forever with people about elections, about a certain leader, about what happened in the last 3 years. There's all this debate about like what a cult is. That's kind of a word where it's used so, like narcissism. It's used so much that it's almost lost its meaning. So what I try to tell people, and it's just my opinion, is that, you know, to use Steve Hassan's bite model, because what is a destructive cult? Well, it uses the bite control: behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. And I have this on the video called Scientology Bites, by the way, guys, so you can pull it up yourself and other references in the pinned comment of that video, because I can't think of anything better than just cut through all the bullshit and go, does Scientology, like under emotional control, for example, does Scientology manipulate and narrow the range of feelings? Some emotions and or needs are deemed as evil, wrong, or selfish. I'm sure you can think of examples of that right away, right? I mean, we're told to think in black and white thinking. SPs are such and such, and they're bad. There's a narrowing of feelings. And also the tone scale, where we learn how to speak like a robot and how to match somebody 0.5 above or 0.5 below their range so we can manipulate them, right? So if you just go down all these things, you know, when I read this, Alex, this is one of the first things I saw in that book that was dropped off, where I realized he wasn't describing Scientology, but I went through each one of these things and almost all of them were describing Scientology. And I was like, holy shit, I'm in a cult. So I skipped that David Miscavige is bad and L. Ron Hubbard had the tech. I skipped that we got tricked in a special way, like me and Aaron talked about on his interview. To me, this was just a roadmap to be able to understand exactly what happened, and can really cut down on a lot of the time for those coming out of Scientology or any cult to get to the core of what the hell happened to you, and also to get rid of the question marks of, well, because the programming pulls you back. You know, it's called programming for a reason. It wants to rubber band you back to thinking that way. So this can be a really good tool. to use to rubber band you out of it, and to make you first understand that you were actually dealing with something that was destructive, meaning it was trying to control you. It was trying to control your life. It controlled our whole family. It ruined, my life and anybody else that was in Scientology. Did you have any things in Scientology? Like when you're talking about that Venn diagram and how you were to decide that man is basically good, what kind of tools did you use to be able to do that?
Yeah, so for me, the bite model and realizing it's a coercive group and all of this, that happened after the Venn diagram, because I couldn't ask myself those questions until I knew exactly what it is that I believed and what it was that is a Scientology thing. So by putting it in the Venn diagram, it really helped me like figure out what it is that it has, how deep it goes with my thoughts and beliefs, and then from that look at, okay, well, is this a manipulative or coercive thing? And I think the Venn diagram, I'm going to share my screen in a second, it's a really good way of demonstrating what I was saying earlier about it not being a set of beliefs but a set of principles. And the way I explain it, I think will be useful to some people, so bear with me. This is the actual one that I did was a lot more comprehensive and complex. I've kind of toned it down for the stream because A, it's a bit personal and it did go really, really deep. And B, I tried to kind of just do this as principles and things that viewers who aren't in Scientology will kind of get. So if you can let me share my screen. Yeah, so on the left, we have principles that I don't agree with. On the right, principles I do agree with. And principles in the middle are kind of that gray area. Now, this is something I did when I was first coming out, and it's something that I've done again since. So this doesn't necessarily reflect my views now. But to give you an idea of how it changes your mindset and the way you're thinking, it's things like, for example, I've put Scientology principles do agree, right? Do your own research, find out for yourself. That is a principle in Scientology. They say find out for yourself. And that's something I can get on board with. I get that as principle, and I do agree that you should find out for yourself before, if you're asked a question or you need to make a decision on how you feel about someone or something. I believe in finding out for myself rather than just taking like what the media says and agreeing with what the news says about something. I would like to do my own research and figure out my own opinion, right? Man is basically good. We talked about that earlier. I'm not going to read through every single one, but things like the basic principle is to survive. And so that's something that's in Dianetics, and it says man is basically trying to survive, and that is the root cause of why anyone does anything good or bad. Even someone who is a narcissist or an abuser or a mass murderer, they're doing it because for whatever reason, which is obviously a wrong reason, but they think that doing that murder or whatever is actually the right thing to do. They think that's going to help their life or someone else's life. They think it's right. It's not obviously the right thing to do, but they think it is. So they're trying to survive, have a better life. And I get that as a principle. I don't agree with it 100% in the way that Scientology applies it. But things like, for example, I've put in the middle, like homosexuality is a really good example here of why I put it in the middle, because I have no issue with homosexuality. I'm very LGBTQ plus friendly. I'm an ally and all of that. But in Dianetics, Scientology and Science and Survival, L. Ron Hubbard writes that homosexuality is bad because it's anti-survival, because nowadays it's different because you have adoption and surrogacy and all this sort of thing. But when it was written in the 50s, there was, if you were gay, you can't reproduce. So therefore, for the survival of the human race, it's an anti-survival thing. Therefore, it's a bad thing. Now, I've put it in the middle here because I don't agree with it, but I can understand how that makes sense. Because if you think about it very literal, matter of fact like that, then yeah, you can understand why homosexuality might not be something that helps grow and continue the existence of the human race. But that doesn't mean it's bad or wrong, and that doesn't mean that there are ways around it. Like now we live in a day and age where being gay or bi or lesbian or trans or whatever doesn't stop you from having children, right? It's not. And even if you weren't able to have children, that doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. Not everyone wants kids. And, so that's why I put it in the middle, because it's a broad subject, but Scientology present it in a way of like, well, if you look at it like this, matter of fact, well, then that's the truth. And so that's what I mean about the way your brain thinks, because it's a big concept, but you think about it in a different way. Psychiatry, antidepressants is also in the middle, because I believe that psychiatry and antidepressants can help people, and there are many cases where it has helped people. It's helped me. But there are cases of abuse where it's overused, overprescribed, and it has harmed people. So I put it in the middle. I don't have my views because of Scientology, but it's a Scientology principle, and I've managed to plot it out whether I agree with it or don't. Same with disconnection, like I talked about earlier. If you've got a friend or someone that's being nasty to you, you're going to distance yourself from them. So I agree with that, but I don't agree with it being applied in the way Scientology apply it, disconnected families and stuff. That's why it's in the middle, because I agree with a part of it, but I also disagree with a part of it. And in Scientology, you don't do this principle. In Scientology, this activity, sorry. In Scientology, it's L. Ron Hubbard is truth, and if you don't agree with it, you have misunderstood it, or you don't fully get the concept. So you need to read it again, figure out what you don't understand, and then you will realize that it's true. So everything L. Ron Hubbard writes is fact, it's gospel. So you don't do this process in your head of like figuring out, what do I actually think about this? Do I agree with it? Do I not agree with it? Because you're so ingrained in, he puts it and talks about it and presents it in such a way that it makes sense in your head and you don't question it.
Yeah, and he calls it scientology. It even has the word science in it. This is a really interesting diagram, man. I was just looking over these while you were talking, and I pretty much agree with everywhere you put this. And this is one of the things that gets us caught, guys. He takes these beautiful quotes like from the East or whoever he rips off, and he says something sensible like this. And this is what made me want to tell all in session, and why I wanted to be honest, because you have to be honest and open to get what they call case gain. That means improving your mind. And he says, no man who is not himself honest can be free. He is his own trap. When his own deeds cannot be disclosed, then he is a prisoner. He must withhold himself from his fellows and is a slave to his own conscience. Now, you know who I immediately think of as an example of that? The very man who wrote this. Hubbard's describing what happened to himself as he went out the Howard Hughes ways with the long fingernails and the dastardly hair. You know, he's creeping around town and shit. And people are like, who's this freak? So this is a true statement, in my opinion, absolutely. But the very man who was telling you, just like he was telling you he wasn't hypnotizing you, and that's an evil thing to do to people without their consent, while he himself was an expert and was putting us all to sleep. So it's just interesting how he himself could be in two minds at the same time. So he could say something that any sensible man's going to agree with that, right, Alex?
Yeah, and things like do your own research, find out for yourself, right? If you think about that as a concept, in Scientology, they say, well, look, find out for yourself. You're reading the books, you're trying the auditing, you're doing it, you're in control. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work for you. That's fine. Like, you're finding out for yourself. Mm-hmm. But actually, you're finding out for yourself and doing research, but within Scientology. If you were to go and read a book that's anti-Scientology, that would not be okay. Right. So they say one thing and they do mean it, and they empower you and make you feel like you're doing it, you know, you're in control, but actually you're in control within their system. So actually they're the ones in control. Yes. You know, things like, what was the other one I was going to talk about? Clearing the planet at the bottom and the middle. You know, I don't believe in the Scientology principle of, you know, the reactive mind and engrams and all of that. It is a specific thing. But I do agree that it's good to have a purpose in life. And I agree that it's a good thing to try and, you know, help other people. And we should strive to live in a better life and help others. So I get a part of it. I don't agree with the technology part of it. Reactive mind and engrams, like, I don't believe in that. I don't agree with it. It's not scientifically proven. But I do agree that there are instances where, for example, if you stepped out into the road and got hit by a car, when you recover, next time you go up to a road and you step out, you might be a bit scared or intimidated because you're reminded of that time you got hit by the car. Concept makes sense. So I agree with it that your past experiences can have an impact on how you feel and your emotions and can be re-stimulated. But I don't agree with L. Ron Hubbard's way of putting it in a scientific reactive mind engrams. Like, I don't believe in his way of presenting it, but I agree with the concept to some extent. And I think I feel like I'm rambling, but I'm just trying to get people to understand that
You're not.
this is the this is the sense of like beliefs in Scientology. It's not, do you believe in this, do you believe in this? It's so deep because it makes you,
Yeah.
it affects every little part of your brain and how you're processing information. And because of that, you find it really hard to figure out what you do actually believe. You know, with the car
Yeah.
example and engrams, I believed what I just said, but I don't believe that because Scientology taught it to me. And by putting it down in this diagram, it's like, well, I believe in this because of my own experiences and seeing people and being scared of whatever, or having my own fears and phobias because it's reminding me of a past instance. I don't agree with how L. Ron Hubbard presents that and the why he gives. And because of that, I don't know, your brain just, it's how you think rather than what you think.
And this is a fantastic tool, Alex. Like as soon as you showed me this, I was like, oh man, this would have saved a lot of time because it's very simple. And you simply like, I'm looking at the tone scale here. And yeah, I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with that. This puts all the concepts that you have rattling around in your head and allows you to kind of get them out of your head or separate them how they're supposed to be separated and permanently put them kind of where you want to put them. And like you said, you can always be updated. You said that some of these you would change. I don't know which ones, man. These are pretty good.
Well,
Like,
I think on the big master document, it's there's loads more in here, but you know,
okay.
I break things down even in
Wow.
even more depth in the big one. So like on the right in Scientology Principles Do Agree, you've got antisocial personalities and good roads, good weather. I don't believe in the whole, you know, SP technology and all this sort of stuff, but I do agree that there are some people out there, narcissists and so on, who actively are not nice people, not good people, that want to hurt you or you know, prevent you from succeeding in life. There are just some people that are like that. That's what Scientology calls an antisocial personality. And good roads, good weather is the policy that L. Ron Hubbard said of, if you come across a suppressive person, if you just kind of talk about light-hearted stuff like, how's the weather? Oh yeah, it's great, it's nice and sunny today, and don't get into deep level conversation, then you can avoid being suppressed by them. As a principle, as a technique, that kind of, I would still do that now. If I come across someone that I don't agree with, or I know I'm going to have an argument with because I've had an argument with them before, I'll just try and keep the conversation lighthearted and not get too deep into a topic that we might disagree on, because I know how it's going to end. It's little things like that, well, that's a technique that I still use today. That is a Scientology technique, but I don't use it because it's Scientology. I use it because actually that's the thing people do anyway, regardless of whether they've been in Scientology. It's just whether you call it and define it good roads, good weather.
Completely understand, man. What about, you know, we're going to have to do an episode, maybe the next one, where we actually break some of these things down, like the tone scale, and to show people how sensible these damn things seem. The only trick is that he says that, again, if you don't understand it, it's not because L. Ron Hubbard's is speaking gibberish. It's because you don't go past a word you don't understand. That's a huge, huge part of keeping this self-reinforcing feedback loop trap going. I thought that was brilliant that he came up with that mind control technique. Because every cult leader has a reason why you have to believe him, and everything that he says is 100% true. But the way Hubbard did it is by telling people, you don't need to believe me. I'm just a man. It's you need
Try
to
it for
think for
yourself.
yourself. It's a very clever way of getting you
Yeah.
to not think for yourself while the entire time you absolutely believe you are. Like I said, if we break down even this tone scale, Alex, maybe we'll do that next time. People can see how clever it is, and it seems to give you a command of how to communicate to people. But this is a very manipulative tool. Did you find yourself having a hard time getting out of trying to match people's tones or talk 0.5 higher? Or did that stick in your brain a lot, this tone scale? Because this one sure kicked the crap out of me.
Yeah, I mean, should I stop sharing so people can see us a little
Yes,
bit better?
yes.
I think with the tone scale, again, it's that thing. I that's exactly what I was doing with my friend that was upset. I was trying to change. For those of you who don't know, the tone scale is this chart of. We went through it in our last video actually together, Doug. With you know, if someone is sad and then they're happy, they don't just switch like that. They go through a journey of emotions, and Hubbard puts it down in this chart and says it's a very linear thing and puts numbers attached to it. So I wasn't thinking of it as the tone scale, But what I was doing was trying to change his person on the tone scale, trying to change his emotions. I was applying the technique, but wasn't aware of it. And that's when I realized that, I'm not sitting here trying to apply it, but I am applying it. And that's where the manipulation comes in, because I was manipulating someone because my brain has been literally programmed to think in a certain way. And that's when I started to do the work with the specialist in coercive groups and stuff, and they're the ones that got me to do this. And this is one of the most, well, just one of many different tools and things that they've got me to do that have been really helpful. But it's helped me figure out in my head who I am, and therefore I can frame it and see Scientology for what it actually is, rather than thinking of it in sort of policies or names of techniques or whatever.
Just to show people on this tone scale, because we believe in reincarnation and past lives in Scientology, it actually goes below body death, which is 0.0 right here. And I was never able to make sense of this one, Alex. How is failure and shame below body death? And then over here, this reminds me of like you're in hell or something and you're controlling bodies. That's negative 1.5. The whole thing's so ludicrous. This alone should have caused me to kind of question Hubbard's sanity. Can't hide, total failure, being nothing. And the way it worked, guys, is let's say Alex was out selling books and he met somebody that was angry here at 1.5. What we were told, in order to be able to manipulate the person to get in communication with them or to buy something from us, he would go up 0.5. You go 0.5 higher. He doesn't explain why that is. It's just supposedly if you speak to him at antagonism, what will happen, Alex? What does he tell you will happen? Like you'll make the sale, or what were you told?
So in Scientology, they talk about you move up the tone scale or down the tone scale. So you go from one point to the next to the next. It's a step by step, almost mathematical, scientific thing. You don't just go from being angry to being happy. It's a process. And this is the thing with emotions, are real things, and everything that's on there, I can kind of agree with, as they are generally emotions. They are ways people think and feel, and there's nothing wrong with it. But what is wrong with it is saying you always 100% of the time go through emotions in this order. So in Scientology, Aaron Hubbard talks, like the example of book selling. If someone is lower than me on the tone scale, by lowering myself to just a little bit higher than where they are, that will bring them up to my level, and then you can go up again like this. And so by changing the way you're speaking to someone and the way you're coming across in your emotions, you're going to be able to change their emotion and bring them up to a happier, better state. Which is manipulating someone's emotions. That's exactly what you're doing.
Exactly.
But you don't think of it in that way.
I know. That's one of the, Alex, in terms of people reaching out, that's one of the things that most exes have had the biggest trouble with. I'm not going to say anybody's name unless they give me permission, but there was a salesman who was, having a real time not manipulating his girlfriend and was having trouble with his relationships because of this damn tone scale. Like how can he not think like that? That's why, another thing is it just takes time. I mean, you've been out for years, right? And you've been working hard with therapy and stuff. I've been out I don't feel like a Scientologist anymore, Alex. It's a really unusual thing for me to slip on even a word, because like I told you, I redefined freaking everything from the ground up. It was terrifying and simultaneously a great opportunity, because I got to build up my personality and sort of make myself into exactly who I would have wanted to be. So I was forced to start over, but it was a blessing in disguise, but not something I'd ever want to do twice. That's why I made damn sure I understand how to spot a similar situation. So my main goal, Alex, was this can never happen again, because my heart can't take it a second time. So I don't want to do what a lot of people do when they leave cults and they go join another fucking cult. Like the big lesson to learn, man, if you don't want to keep getting your ass kicked, at least for me, and why it took so long to speak out. I was never even planning on speaking out. My main goal is I want to know who I am. I want to know the truth of what happened to me in Scientology. And that took me down a lot of rabbit holes, learning psychology and learning this whole subject called mind control, for lack of a better word. that opened me up to a whole bunch of knowledge I wasn't even taught in school or even with the psychologists that I saw. So it's been an adventure, man. But man, I got to tell you, it was such a trip to believe in something with such certainty. There was no way anybody was going to take Scientology away from me. I knew we had the tech, Alex. I knew it was the way. So to find out, in a single day that there was something to question, I didn't know how the trick was done. There's this famous ex-Scientologist named Arnie Lerma, RIP, who really got deep into dissecting how this whole thing works. He went way kind of beyond a lot of the other exes and deconstructing this thing. And it was just amazing how much detail there is in this trap that he created. And another thing is, he was blowing my mind, Hubbard, with where did you get the ARC triangle? Where did you get all these incredible concepts? Where did you get this intelligence espionage technology? Where did you get the data evaluator series? Where did you get this org board? Like, it was all, and then he had it set up like the military. It was so heady. There is knowledge in there. It's just twisted. And like you said, it has to be 100% or nothing. That's a big thing. It's not a cult if you can really, choose. But when he says it's my way or the highway, right?
Yeah, and if you look at why, we can sort of dissect this a little bit and look at the why behind it and why that attracts people. You talked about people leaving a cult and joining another cult, and it's linked to the Hubbard's certainty in saying it's 100% true 100% of the time. If it's done correctly, you either believe in it 100% or you don't. It's a way of manipulating people, but if you think about it, people join coercive groups, people join Scientology because they're looking for answers. They're looking for more from life than they're currently getting. They are swooped in by the kind of, well, in Scientology we believe that we can clear the planet and we've got this big mission to make the world a better place, and that's what they try and extract that from you and going, well, this is the way of doing it. And by having 100% certainty, it removes that doubt and questioning in your mind. So if you're looking for an answer to a big life question, existential question, well, they're coming in and saying, this is the answer. So you're like, okay, great. It removes that question of doubt in your mind because you've got the answer that you're looking for. And so then you get sucked in. I think that's why a lot of people leave a cult and then join another one, because yes, they've left the cult, but they're back in the situation they were at the beginning of having these big existential questions and things in their life that aren't quite right, that they want to change and want to do better. They are looking still for the answers to those questions they've had all along. And yeah, they may have realized that the answer isn't Scientology, but they haven't yet got to the point where they've done the work themselves to figure out what they actually believe, because another cult or coercive group comes in and says, well, here's the answer. And that's how it kind of gets you, because it stops you thinking and processing in your brain and critically thinking. It gives you the answer so you don't have to do the work. It's an easy, lazy way of going about things. But
yes, you're so right. And you're just reminding me, the bridge to total freedom, as if enlightenment, if there is such a thing, was going to be that easy, right? Just paint by numbers, follow the carefully tapped path out of here, as Hubbard says. It's too easy, Alex. What I found coming out of it is there was all sorts of shades of gray, things to work out, and a whole bunch of knowledge. Like, you're not going to get everything you need to know from one man's books. I'm not bashing on people's religions, but apparently with religion, all you need to know is between the cover of a single book. But when I blasted out of Scientology, I was so suppressed from learning knowledge and had phobias indoctrinated into me as to why I should not seek outside knowledge, that as soon as I got out, just to get up to the level of normal society, I had to study everything that a normal human would. Like, what does science say? I had my head in the clouds, dude. So I felt like I was 2 worlds back and really age regress. And the experience made me a little bit more intelligent. And I know this is going to sound contradictory, but street smart in a certain way. But it also really made me stupid. Like, Scientology makes you stupid. I'm not saying we're stupid people, Alex. They have a tendency to, the mind control actually has to work using intelligence to kind of hook your left brain and get you to figure out puzzles and shit. So it's not that we're dumbasses, but I got to tell you, I felt so dumb, and I knew I was dumb. So many years were spent getting up to the normal knowledge, and you have to find out how the trick was done, as Arnie said, and learn a whole bunch of other subjects. If you do your due diligence, you know, about mind control and books like we talk about Steve Hassan, but that's just the beginning. So it's just amazing, like how much damage this fucking thing does. And even 15 years later, I'm still trying to find out who I really am, you know, which is what we freaking went in there to, you know, I thought I was finding out who I am. Alex, thank God we didn't get up to OT8 and find out. Now we know who we're not, and we're willing to find out who we are, because, oh my God, man, my poor dad got up to that level, dude, and he was staying in that mind state, which is a mentally ill state of mind. I'm sorry to say it is. You're not seeing reality correctly. You know, my dad wasn't seeing reality correctly, and he spent 20 years in that state of mind and no ability to break that bubble.
And I think the recovery process is, it's not like a 12-step program like in Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous. You know, there are things like that exist and that do help, that are beneficial and all of that, but it's not in Scientology, this is the answer. Auditing works 100% of the time on everyone. You know, it's a one-stop shop. Well, and actually, everyone's mind is different. Everyone's experience is different, and everyone's emotions are different. So there isn't a universal cure or method to go about recovery, because part of recovery is learning more about yourself and figuring things out. For example, one thing I was thinking about was, you know, the cycle in Scientology, that you learn about how communication works, and there's this formula, and you have to like model it with clay demos and stuff, and you know, you think about something as basic as communication. Everyone knows how to communicate. You can talk to each other, you can blink, you can have emotions, and you know how to communicate, right? But in Scientology, they go, well, this is how to really effectively communicate and get your message across in an efficient way, and be 100% in control of what message you're conveying to someone else. And a cycle, which is just another word for conversation, you know, it's like A, B, you know, person A talks, person B said, you know, receives it and then acknowledges that they've heard, and then they say something back. And it's something that sounds really simple, but by breaking a concept like communication down to that level, you then start thinking about communication in a different way. So when you leave, even though you don't believe in Scientology, you will still be communicating with people in the way that you've been drilled to communicate. Because, you know, if you speak to I see a lot of Scientologists, especially on SPTV, and people who share their stories saying, okay, good. Okay, good is such a Scientology term, because that's drilled into you. When you say something, you know, that you acknowledge them, you go, okay, good. That's a way in Scientology, as an auditor, you acknowledge you've received the communication from the other person. And it's a hang up. It doesn't mean these people are applying Scientology. You know, they know that they're doing it, but like,
that's a good, they don't know for a lot of time.
Concept that's been broken down, and the way that you think a conversation works. And I remember having an argument with a friend once, because she kept like interjecting with what I was saying, and I got really angry. And it's still a bit of a pet peeve of mine to this day, but getting really upset of like, why do you keep cutting me off and blah, blah. And we had this really in-depth conversation where she was like, Alex, I don't know about Scientology, but we've talked about it before. And a conversation doesn't work like A, B, A, B, right? A natural
but that's how we were drilled.
Yeah. But the way that in my head, I was annoyed that this person, because this person interjecting in my brain came across as this person isn't understanding what I'm saying. They're not acknowledging it, because when you understand what someone's saying, you acknowledge it, and then you have your response. Well, actually, you can understand what someone's saying without saying thank you. Okay, good.
Yes, but it's hard to break. You're reminding me. I still have problems with that today, man. That's probably one of the parts that has actually stuck with me a bit, is wanting to get an acknowledgement and then wait. Like, see, you just almost interrupted me and cut my comm. Like that, but that's not how I used to
straight away, because I didn't want to cut your comm, because
I didn't used to talk like this, Alex. I forget what it was like just being normal, where you would just talk normal. And another thing, you know what, bro? It took me forever. I had to purposely look away from people, because you get that Ron look.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the stares. So they wouldn't say much stuff too much, but I was aware of it when I was coming out. To get rid of that stare took years. And so I had to train myself to purposely look away from people
Did
as a
you go
drill.
overboard with it? Because I went overboard with it.
Yes.
Just to break it down for
Sometimes.
people
Yes,
in the
I
chat,
did. Please.
Scientology with the TRs, the training routines, you're taught to confront, right? And part of that is you spend like hundreds of hours sitting there looking at someone in the eyes and just not reacting. And you train yourself to look someone directly in the eyes, and that is your command intention, right? You are getting your message across, you are confident, you are certain just by making eye contact. Comes across a bit creepy to people who aren't in Scientology, but when you get out and you realize that that's what you're doing, for me, I was like, okay, so I kind of went overboard in deliberately trying not to do it. So people thought I was a bit shifty and a bit nervous because I never gave anyone eye contact, because I was deliberately trying not to do it, and I was overcorrecting myself. And this is the thing I want to get across about recovery, is going back to saying it takes time and it's not an overnight process. These things will... You said something once in one of your streams that I will never not be an ex-Scientologist. It's something that a big part of recovery is accepting and recognizing what you've gone through and being okay with it. Like, it's okay to still do certain things. It's okay to have the creepy stare. It's okay to think of communication as like, okay, good, thank you, because there's nothing wrong with that, because you're not using it in a manipulative way and you're not coercing people. Like, and going back to Venn diagram, the step I did after that was coming to terms with, like, there are things in Scientology that are okay to still do, right? And those things, actually, for most people, you'll realize are things that L. Ron Hubbard took from elsewhere anyway. They're not Scientology principles. And that links into this gray area thing you mentioned as well, of like, in Scientology, you're either with the program or you're not. You're either a Scientologist or you're against Scientology. There's no room for this gray area, this nuance. And learning in recovery to be okay with indecision and not thinking in my brain, okay, I've got to choose A or B, I've got to make a decision. How do I feel about this? Well, I either have to feel this way or I have to feel this way. For me, a huge thing was being okay with, like, kind of feeling a bit of two different ways about something. Do I like this picture or this painting? Well, I think it's all right. I kind of like this aspect of it and I don't like this aspect of it. Whereas in Scientology, it's like, you like it or you don't like it. And that's a huge thing to unpick, not unpack, because it's little bits, right? In your brain, of like being okay with not having to make a binary choice about everything. And that takes time.
Great point. And you just reminded me, when you're coming out, I was so used to saving the planet, and there was such a stress built up to work, be busy, that I had to force myself, and I did this a lot on purpose, to relax. Like you said, Alex, to do nothing, to just sit there and watch television. I mean, that's something I would never do when I was a Scientologist. There's no time. We have a planet to clear, and the guilt stacks up if you do anything that's off purpose. I was so dedicated. All my spare time was spent listening to the lectures. My dad had the whole library of every book, bro, and every lecture. So in my early 20s, I was just eating up everything. And I have kind of a one-track mind too. I can't multitask. So once I'm into something, they had me for life until, I broke, thank God. And by the way, lady, you are recently out, I believe, too. And we have, correct me if I'm wrong, and then Marilyn also. Congratulations, Marilyn, and welcome. I'm trying to find your comment, but you've been a former cult member 15 years as well. I'm just starting to be able to speak out about it. Good for you, because believe me, we know how hard it is. Took many years to process what the hell happened. And
for those of you who don't know, sorry to interject.
No, please go ahead.
Fuck the comm cycle.
Exactly. Good for you. Good for you.
For those of you who don't know, Marilyn is the one that makes the crochet outfits for the Microinda bobblehead, so you can get the SP shop.
Cool,
so
Marilyn.
if you have a bobblehead and you want to get a little Xenu outfit or the Duke of Chug, go on her Facebook page, because she hand makes them and they are really awesome. I've actually got one, I believe, being made for me now, so I can't wait for it to arrive. But she's a really lovely person, and
that's funny, Marilyn. I got to see those.
This is a thing that, like, for me has surprised me most, and it links into this whole idea of purpose and belonging, because this community, if it wasn't for Scientology, I wouldn't be here doing this now, right? I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't be doing this with my life. And I'm genuinely enjoying it. I love hearing from different people, from talking to people, learning their stories. Goldie, yourself, all the lovely people I've spoken to, I've made friends out of this trauma, like bonding that we all have. But actually, I've kind of found my tribe. I've found that sense of belonging that I was looking for, that Scientology gave me. Scientology was like, well, this is where you belong. This is what you're going to do with your life. You're going to save the planet, and you've got this mission to, say, clear the planet and save humanity. And I'm now in a position where, if you ask me what my purpose was, I don't know. I'd probably still say something along the lines of helping people, because I do like helping people. But this community, it shows the difference between a coercive group and a non-coercive group, because there's no one in this community telling me what to think. There's no one in this community saying, well, we all collectively want to take down the Church of Scientology, because some people don't want to take down. They just want to hear stories. Some people just want to meet people, and whatever you're getting from the community yourself is totally fine. But you find that sense of belonging. And this community is where I've found recently, in the last month or two since starting my own channel, I've found more of a sense of a place I belong and a reason I'm doing, I have a reason for what I'm doing. And I'm like, cool, I enjoy making videos, talking to people, and I feel like I'm achieving something. And it's not in a productive way of like, I've got to work. If I'm not working, I'm not helping the planet. I can do a video one day, I can do no videos, I can do 10 videos another day, I could just be in someone's chat. I'm in control of it, but I am enjoying it, and I feel like I'm being productive because I'm helping people and I'm doing what I want to do. And that sense of belonging and purpose is something you're looking for when you join Scientology, and it's just so beautiful that I found it. I wasn't looking for that in this community, but I found my tribe,
You took the words right out of my mouth. I couldn't have said that any better. And Alex, I guess we'll wind up. We've been going for almost an hour and a half. It's amazing how fast the time goes. Guys, if you have any quick questions, we would like to take some questions before we just bail out of here. But that's a perfect place to end it for the next one. That was fantastic. And Alex, I also don't think you know how I hornswoggled you into getting back into my cult, because this is called Thursdays at 2 p.m. So you're going to be required to get certain stats to me, via YouTube and everything else, to get them up by Thursday before we meet next time. You see how I did that? I gave you free choice, but not really.
I didn't realize it was PM. I thought it was just Thursdays at 2, because you and I have got a bit of a thing going on, and in Scientology,
we're supposed to talk about that live. But
in
go ahead, Alex, if you want to,
there are 8 dynamics, and the second dynamic is love. And so when you said Thursdays at 2, I thought you were making some sort of suggestion that we had a second dynamic kind of thing going on.
Oh
so
my
you
God,
just crushed
that's
my
so
heart.
funny. I knew we weren't going to get. Look at how
2
red I'm
p.m.
turning. I knew we were going to get through this without Alex busting my fucking balls.
Just for everyone in the chat, in our pre-chat,
God.
when Doug and I were talking, I told him that joke, and I told him I was going to open this whole live video.
Yeah.
God damn it, I told everyone I was going to start this live video with that joke, and I've led him into a full sense of security, getting all the way to the end without.
That was great, because I thought I was manipulating you to get you on the Thursday before too, under the guise of, hey, it's just innocent, but now I'm going to require stats from you, and then you just popped out the 2D joke. Just to let you guys know, I am 100% heterosexual, but Alex has a crush on me. He's been 2D flowing me since I met him, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Shut up.
But I had to get the last word. We were both heterosexual.
Colonel Brock is right. 2D isn't just Dex's family.
Yeah, Colonel Brock, were you in Scientology? Because earlier, I believe you said you were out for 40.
I believe he was.
Yeah, I believe he was too. Welcome, my friend.
There's a really good comment there from Austin. I can't highlight comments.
Can you tell me what it's called and give me, and I'll pull it up.
The guy called Austin in the comments. Alex, did you know much of the Wackley family? So yes, this Austin, I don't know who you are, but please email me hello@apostatealex.com, because the fact that you dropped those names is interesting to me. Yes, I knew the Wackley family. Charlie was my senior. He was my boss. I don't think there's an Anton Wackley. There are three brothers, Charlie, Matt, and Jason Wackley. Their mum, Natalie Wackley, she was the test center IC. She used to come out book selling with me. Jason was an ethics officer. Matt was a course supervisor. Their dad, Nick, unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But yeah, very, very close to the Wackley family. And if there is one person who I was closest with in the org, it was Charlie. He was like my best mate. And if there's one thing that I'm still upset about is Scientology, is that Scientology is the reason we can't be friends, right? Because he's been brought up in it. He's a third generation Scientologist. So in his mind, Scientology is the way forward. So without me being a Scientologist, there is no connection there. And we did get on really, really well, but you know, that's just the way it is.
That sucks. And that guy's so hardcore, you know, he's so young too. I hope he gets out, Alex. I hope he doesn't spend the rest of his life in there. But you know, growing up, well, you wouldn't, but I mean, there's some of these people that grow up multi-generation like him, where it's going to be a brave action if he gets out, or something. Like I say, if you're in that deep, something has to smash you over the head, usually up to and including maybe having your life on the line in order to get out. Just ask Mike Rinder and these people
And I
that
think
were immersed in the Sea Org.
Yeah, that's a good opportunity to mention the Aftermath Foundation, because if there is anyone who is looking to get out, they're trying to leave Scientology, they want to leave, they contact the Aftermath Foundation, Google it, aftermathfoundation.org. They are there to help you leave. And they are not an organization that will try and convince you to leave. They're not an anti-Scientology. They don't try and convince you or talk you out of it. It's if you've decided you want to get out and you need some help, whether you're a public, a staff member, or a Sea Org member, contact them. They will help you get out. And I've always said recently in my videos that if you're not ready to do that and you are watching these videos and you're still in Scientology and you just want to like speak to someone about your experiences that understand that, you know, Doug, myself, Poe on the Go, you know, all of these people on this SPTV thing, we're not in the business. I hope you don't mind me speaking for you, Doug, but I'm pretty sure we're on the same page. We're not in the business of trying to convince you to leave. If I got an email from a Scientologist saying, I'm still in, I'm in the Sea Org, and, you know, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this, or, you know, I went through this, what's your experience been? I'm not going to try and convince you. Doug, I'm sure you won't either, because that's not our goal. Our goal is to help you, right? And if you're in Scientology and you don't necessarily want to leave and need the help of the Aftermath Foundation, just email us, because we're here to talk to you and chat and help you. And that was the biggest thing. I started this conversation talking about hearing people's experiences and journeys, and we're here to help as well. We're not here to try and convince you, because that will never get someone out of Scientology. If you want to know how to help someone, it's ask questions, listen to them, get them thinking for themselves, not telling them you're in a cult. I got told I was in a cult daily in my job in Scientology. That's not why I left.
Did you?
I was out book selling. People would always say, oh, you're in a cult, you believe in aliens, you believe in Xenu. Really? You know, you just, in your mind, you just shut down and you just don't, you go, no, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm not going to listen to anything. Whereas if someone came up to me and said, how do you feel about this? Or when you read this policy that completely contradicts this policy, how do you process the information? Get someone thinking
exactly right.
in their brain.
That will be probably our next one. There's so many options for the next episode. But Alex, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. And I think, hope you guys got something out of that, but we have a lot more planned. And like I said, you know, one person up here was asking, you know, for kind of more solutions and stuff. We just scratched the tip of the iceberg. And like I said, we kind of have a list of subjects we'd like to cover. I really appreciate you guys joining us. It's so great to see so many familiar faces in the chat and such a lovely community. Goldie, as always, thank you so much for helping. I don't know how you sleep. Angela, thanks for being the word clear IC. And Lady, thank you for keeping me just putting a smile on my face throughout the whole chat, man. You guys are freaking awesome. And I'll go ahead and please, Alex.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who came along for this and got involved. I love the chat and the community and how engaged everyone is. You know, I can't end it without plugging our channels a little bit. So if you're
Oh,
on my
please.
channel, please go and follow Doug on Dazed but Not Confused, and vice versa. If you're on Dazed but Not Confused, please feel free to come over and watch my videos. If you want to support us, the best way to get a channel to grow is through engagement. I say this in every video. It's probably quite boring to hear now, but I'm going to continue drilling in. Right,
Please.
liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing actually makes the algorithm in YouTube push your video out to more people. So engaging is actually the best way of helping support a channel. We both have links in our descriptions if you want to buy us a coffee to help financially. But we're not in this for the money. It's all about helping, sharing experiences. So by sharing and liking and commenting, that helps us help more people because it gets the video out to more people. So that's the best way of helping. So thanks to everyone that's done that. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, Alex. That's the part that I hate to say the most. I mean, not only are we not making money off this, but I'm definitely in the hole several $1,000s, but that's not the point. If you really want to help, please do those things that Alex said, and just taking 1 second to hit the like, or especially commenting after the video, even if you just say comment for the algorithm. The way to help people that are in cults or that are in abusive relationships like this is to have the video come across their feed. You never know who's going to be down and out, like me and Alex were, sitting, throwing on YouTube, and then a Scientology video pops up. That can be the thing that starts the whole thing. So guys, until the next one, I'll leave you with the outro. And this one's a little intense and creepy, but I wanted to hit the Thursday Before 2 theme, but the next intros will probably be a little lighter, but it's very appropriate. And guys,
And
take care.
tune in next week as well. We'll do this next week.
Same bat time, same bat. I'm glad you said that too. This is a regular weekly thing with me and Alex. So regardless of what videos do and don't, please check out Alex's channel too. He's already got a ton of amazing content and amazing interviews, and the link is in the description box of this video to go over there. But I guess I'll just end it off there. I feel like, Alex, I have to get off to go to your live because we're jumping, but now we have together. So this is great. I really love working with you, man, because you've been a fucking amazing contribution to this community and friend. And until
Likewise.
the next one, my friends, thank you, brother.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's a bromance. Deal with it, guys.